This is VOA News. Via remote, I'm Marissa Melton. New reports of bodies found in Ukraine's southern city of Mariupol, which is now under Russian control after weeks of siege. VOA's Flashpoint Ukraine spoke with Anna Chernikova, who's reporting from Kyiv.
We know that this information is coming mostly from the intelligence and from the civilians who are there, who tell this, apparently to Ukrainian officials who still have connection with certain people. And according to the officials, today it was another shocking news that another 70 bodies of the civilians, they were found under the ruins of former October plant. And this plant was one of the shelters for the civilians.
Flashpoint Ukraine brings you detailed coverage from Ukraine Monday through Friday. You can find it at our website, voanews.com, or on our mobile app, where you can listen to it as a podcast. Look for Flashpoint Ukraine. U.S. military officials acknowledge they've spoken to Ukrainian officials repeatedly about Kyiv's requests for newer, more advanced weapons that could help stave off Russian gains in the Donbas. But they refuse to say publicly whether those weapon systems will be delivered anytime soon. Ukraine has been pleading for weeks with the U.S. to get American-made multiple-launch rocket systems, which are more powerful and more maneuverable than other artillery systems Washington and the West have provided to date. Meanwhile, Russian forces have pushed ahead in eastern Ukraine, making what senior U.S. defense officials have described as incremental gains in a fight that has largely featured artillery and other so-called long-range fire. From Washington, you're listening to VOA News. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday spoke by phone with Austrian Chancellor Karl Nehammer. According to Nehammer, Putin offered to complete natural gas deliveries to Austria and to discuss a prisoner swap with Ukraine. The Austrian Chancellor said Putin had made a commitment that there must be and should be access to prisoners of war, including the International Red Cross. On the other side, he said Putin also demands access to Russian prisoners of war in Ukraine. Nehammer said he was doubtful Putin was interested in any negotiations to end the war. In the U.S. state of Texas, Governor Greg Abbott says he was misled about the response to the Uvalde shooting. AP correspondent Mike Gracia has that story.
I was misled. I am livid about what happened.
At a news conference Friday afternoon, Texas Governor Greg Abbott said he received inaccurate information about the law enforcement response to the Uvalde school shooting on Tuesday.
I wrote down hand notes in detail about what everybody in that room told me.
Abbott said he expects a thorough investigation into the actions of law enforcement as Robb Elementary School was under assault.
There are people who deserve answers the most, and those are the families whose lives have been destroyed.
Authorities said Friday officers waited in a hallway for more than 45 minutes. Colonel Stephen McGraw heads the Texas Department of Public Safety.
It was a wrong decision, period. There's no excuse for that.
The 18-year-old gunman killed 19 children and 2 teachers. I'm Mike Gracia.
Officials from the Group of 7 wealthy nations announced Friday they will aim to largely end greenhouse gas emissions from their power sectors by 2035. The move makes it highly unlikely that those countries will burn coal for electricity beyond that date. Ministers from the G7 countries meeting in Berlin Friday also announced a target to have a highly decarbonized road sector by 2030. That means electric vehicles would dominate new car sales by the end of the decade. The G7 also recognized, for the first time, the need to provide developing countries with additional financial aid to cope with the loss and damage caused by global warming. The agreements were largely welcomed by climate advocates. And African leaders have gathered for a summit in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea, to address growing humanitarian needs on the continent, which is also facing increased violent extremism, climate change challenges, and a run of military coups. Recapping our top story this hour, there have been new reports of bodies found in Ukraine's southern city of Mariupol, which is now under Russian control after weeks of siege. And you can keep up with the news from Ukraine at our website, voanews.com. Via remote, I'm Marissa Melton, VOA News.